Here's what the experts don't want you to know about discipline. Talent is a damn delusion. What really separates the successful from the unsuccessful is the ability to show up and do the work day in and day out when no one is looking. Today, I'm going to teach you how to show up and work even when you don't feel like it. Every morning, somewhere in the world, 2 babies are born at exactly the same time. One might be blessed with what we call natural talent, and the other might look ordinary at first glance. But here's the miracle I've witnessed over and over again in my 40 years of watching people succeed and fail. That so-called ordinary baby, armed with discipline, often ends up living an extraordinary life. I remember sitting in a small diner in Idaho, watching a young waitress. She moved with such precision, remembering every order without writing them down, handling the morning rush hour like she was an orchestra conductor. Someone told her she must be naturally good at this. She smiled and said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. 6 months ago, I could barely carry 2 plates. I practiced with plates and glasses full of water in my apartment every night for 3 hours. Talent is like having a beautiful sports car, pretty to look at, nice to show off, but completely useless without gas in the tank. And discipline. Discipline is the gas station that never closes, always open, 24/7, ready to fuel your ride, rain or shine, whether you feel like stopping or not. Most people spend their lives admiring sports cars. They point at others and say, "If only I had his talent." But they are missing the fundamental truth that has been staring us in the face since the beginning of time. Discipline is the great equalizer. It is the force that turns average into exceptional. Talent without discipline is like having $1 million in a bank account that you can't access. What good is it? But discipline? Oh, discipline is different. It's like having a coin that doubles every day. It seems small at first, almost insignificant, but give it 30 days and see what happens. The beautiful thing about discipline is that it doesn't play into anyone's hands. It doesn't care where you were born, what last name you have, or how many natural gifts you think you lack. Discipline only asks one question. Are you willing to show up today, tomorrow, and then the next day? What the most successful people I've ever met have in common isn't talent or intelligence or even luck. It's their unwavering commitment to doing what needs to be done, especially when they don't feel like doing it. That's discipline in its purest form, and what most people don't understand about discipline is that it's not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about being a little bit better today than you were yesterday. Because while talent might give you an edge, discipline ensures that you finish the race. I think we're on the verge of something remarkable. Here we are, about to explore why the most talented people don't always win and why the most disciplined people rarely lose. Because in the end, discipline isn't just about beating talent. It's about making yourself into the person who deserves success. We've created a fairy tale around talent. We see someone play the piano beautifully, and we say, "Oh, they're so talented." We watch an athlete break a record and whisper, "It's just a natural gift." But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. We're watching the performance, but we're missing the rehearsals. I'll never forget this young man I met in Chicago years ago. He was what people called a natural at sales. Everyone at his company talked about his gift for closing deals. One night after a business meeting, I found him sitting alone in the conference room. No one was watching. He was practicing his responses to customer objections. This natural had filled 5 notebooks with different scenarios and responses. He'd been doing this every night for 3 years. That's when it hit me. We're not seeing talent, we're seeing the results of countless hours of invisible work. The myth of natural talent is probably the most expensive lie we've ever sold ourselves. It's expensive because it robs us of our power. It gives us an excuse to stay comfortable. Society loves talent because talent makes a great story. Oh, we were born with it. That sounds a lot better than saying they worked at it for 10,000 hours. But here's the problem with believing in natural talent. It's like believing in magic. It's entertaining, but it won't help you build a life. I've spent decades watching people succeed and fail, and I've noticed something fascinating. Those who believe in talent often give up when things get tough. Why? Because they think that if they don't do it naturally, they must not be cut out for it. But those who believe in discipline, they just keep showing up. They understand that mastery is not inherited, it's earned. Let me share something with you that changed my perspective forever. I used to think that some people were born organized, born punctual, born successful. Then I started looking more closely. You know what? I found the most organized person I knew. He spent 30 minutes every night planning the next day. The most punctual person had a system where he set all the clocks 10 minutes ahead. The most successful person worked when others watched TV. Talent has an expiration date. Without discipline, talent spoils like milk left out in the sun. I've seen incredibly talented people reach their limit because they relied only on their natural abilities. Meanwhile, I've watched seemingly average people surpass them through sheer consistent discipline. Talent, in fact, sometimes works against you. When things come easy, you don't develop the emotional muscles you need for tough times. You don't learn to overcome difficulty. You don't build resilience. But discipline is like a faithful friend who shows up every day, teaching you those crucial lessons whether you want it or not. The world is full of talented failures and disciplined successes in every city. The naturally gifted student who never learned to study is now working a job he hates, while his average classmate who studied every day runs a successful company. The talented athlete who skipped practice now watches from the stands, while his less talented teammate never missed a training session. What we call talent in the major leagues is often just discipline in disguise. And the beautiful thing about discipline is that it is available to everyone. You may not be able to choose your natural abilities, but you can absolutely choose what time you wake up. You can choose to read instead of watch TV. You can choose to practice when others play. Stop worrying about talent and start focusing on discipline. Something magical happens. You take back control. Because talent is about what you were born with, but discipline is about what you choose to do with what you have. And that choice changes everything. Because while talent may determine where you start, discipline determines where you end up. And I don't know about you, but I'm much more interested in where people end up than where they start. People misunderstand success. They're looking for big, dramatic changes. They want to transform their life overnight, but that's not how it works. That's never how it's worked. Let me show you some simple math that changed my life. If you improve just 1% every day, just a little 1%, do you know where you'll be in a year? Not 365% better, you'll be 37 times better. That's the power of compound improvement. That's what discipline gives you that talent never can. Take two people, one with tremendous talent who improves 0.1% every day because they rely on their natural ability, and one with average talent who improves 1% every day through sheer discipline. After a month, it doesn't seem like a big deal. The talented person is still ahead. But by day 100, by day 200, the gap becomes so big you can't even see it. Discipline isn't just about working hard, it's about understanding the math of everyday actions. Every day you're either building momentum or you're losing it. There's no way to stay the same. Life has no pause button. I remember meeting a gentleman in Seattle who built a $50 million company. Somebody asked him how he did it. They were expecting some complex strategy, some brilliant innovation. You know what? He made 10 sales calls every day. Never 9, never 11, 10 calls every day for 20 years. That's discipline. That's math. If you read just 10 pages of a good book every day, that's 3,650 pages a year. That's about 18 books. In 5 years, you will have read 90 books. Now, imagine sitting across from someone who is interviewing you for a position while you haven't read a single book since college. Who do you think has the advantage? Discipline is unbeatable. It has never lost an argument. If you save $1 a day just by skipping that overpriced coffee and investing that for a modest 8% return, you will have over $1,000 in 20 years. That's not talent, that's not genius, that's just discipline plus math. The math of discipline works the other way around too. Skipping today's workout doesn't seem like a big deal. Skip it for a week and you still look the same. Skip it for a year and now you're looking at a completely different person in the mirror. The math doesn't care about your excuses, it just keeps working, multiplying your progress or your regret. Success leaves clues, and when you look at the clues successful people leave behind, you realize they're all simple math. Write 500 words a day, that's a novel in 4 months. Do 5 push-ups every morning, that's 1,825 push-ups a year. Learn 1 new word a day, that's college-level vocabulary in 3 years. The talent someone is born with is a one-time deposit into their account. But discipline is like compound interest. It builds up day after day, year after year, and like compound interest, the first deposits yield the biggest return. Everything has a price. But here's the kicker. You don't get to choose whether to pay a price or not. The only choice you have is which price you're going to pay, the price of discipline or the price of regret. I learned this lesson in a way I'll never forget. Years ago, I sat in a small office in Chicago with one of my first mentors. He was a man who had built something extraordinary from scratch. I was complaining about how hard it was to stick to my goals, how much I had to sacrifice. He walked to his filing cabinet, pulled out 2 folders, and placed them on his desk. "Look at this," he said. The first folder contained his daily schedule for the past 20 years, getting up at 5 a.m., exercising, reading, planning, working, learning. The second folder showed his bank accounts, how he went from nearly bankrupt to financially free. These 2 folders, he said, show the price of discipline. Then he asked me, "Would you like to see the price of regret?" Go to any nursing home and ask people what they wish they had done differently. That hit me like a ton of bricks, because the price of regret is always higher. Always. And here's the interesting thing. You pay the price of discipline in ounces, but you pay the price of regret in tons. The price of discipline may be getting up an hour earlier when your bed feels so comfortable. The price of regret is looking back at a decade of wasted mornings, missed opportunities, squandered potential. The price of discipline may be saying no to that extra slice of pizza, that extra hour of TV, that impulse purchase. The price of regret is lugging around an extra £50 to your daughter's wedding, having nothing meaningful to show for your free time, working well into your 70s because you never saved. Most people focus on what discipline costs them. Today they say, "I can't afford to invest that $1 a month." But they never ask themselves, "Can I afford not to?" They say, "I don't have time to exercise." But they never ask, "Do I have time to get sick?" They look at the price of discipline and think it's too high without ever looking at the price tag of regret. I've noticed over the years that the price of discipline actually goes down over time. Habits that once seemed like torture become easier. They become automatic, but the price of regret keeps going up. It piles up like bad debt with a horrible interest rate. You know what else? Discipline has a refund policy. Everything you sacrifice today, every convenience you delay, every difficult choice you make, comes back multiplied. But regret offers no refunds. There is no second chance with wasted time, missed opportunities, or unfulfilled potential. I remember asking that mentor of mine, years later, what he considered his greatest achievement. Do you know what he said? It wasn't his business success or his wealth. He said his greatest achievement was being able to look in the mirror every morning and know that he wasn't living a what-if life. He paid the price of discipline willingly, daily and consistently. You can't pay both. Every time you choose to pay the price of discipline, you're automatically avoiding the price of regret. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're choosing to pay the price of regret later. 20 years from now, it's bound to come. The question is, two people are at the exact same starting point. Today, one pays the price of discipline. The other pays the price of regret. In 20 years, they'll be living in two completely different worlds. What I'm going to share with you now is the architecture of achievement. Because after watching thousands of lives transform, I've noticed that unwavering discipline rests on 5 fundamental pillars. If you're missing any of them, the whole structure becomes unstable. Your morning routine isn't just about starting your day, it's about setting the tone for who you're becoming. You see, the most common lie people tell themselves is, "I'll do it later," but disciplined people don't negotiate with their mornings. They master them. If you can't control your morning, you can't control your life. When you win the morning, you win the day. It's that simple. But winning the morning starts the night before. You have to decide, are you going to be the kind of person who runs their day, or the kind who lets their day run them? As far as goal setting goes, people think goals are about the end result, but that's not it at all. Goals are about who you become in pursuit of them. When you set a goal, you're really saying, "This is the person I'm committed to becoming." The goal isn't to write a book. The goal is to become a writer. The goal is not to build a business. The goal is to become an entrepreneur. Now, here's something fascinating about environmental design, the third pillar. Most people try to use willpower to overcome their environment. That's like trying to swim against the tide. It's possible, but it's exhausting. Smart people design their environment to lead them toward their goals. If you want to read more, put books everywhere and hide the TV remote. If you want to eat better, stock your kitchen with healthy food and get rid of the junk food. Your environment will always win against your willpower. I remember visiting a friend's office. Years ago, he was one of the most productive people I knew. You know what I noticed? His desk was facing away from the window to avoid too many distractions. That's environmental design. He wasn't trying to be more disciplined by not looking out the window. He just eliminated the temptation. Accountability. Discipline is not an individual sport. The most disciplined people I know all have someone watching them. They all have someone to be accountable to. We often let ourselves down before we let others down. Why do people hire personal trainers when they already know how to work out? Because that appointment is a commitment to another person. That investment, it all creates accountability. When you're accountable to someone, your excuses have to face someone else's scrutiny, and most excuses don't survive that scrutiny. Discipline isn't about always being in action. It's about being in action at the right time. The most disciplined people I know are also the best at rest because they understand that recovery isn't a break from discipline, it's discipline. It's like chopping wood. You can't just keep swinging the axe. At some point, you have to sharpen it. That's what recovery does. It sharpens your axe. But here's the key. Recovery has to be planned, not random. It's not about collapsing on the couch when you're exhausted. It's about strategically recharging so you can perform at your best. Your morning routine fuels your goals. They determine how you design your environment. Your environment supports your accountability, and your accountability ensures that you maintain your recovery practices. If you skip one, the whole structure becomes unstable. You don't need special talents, you don't need advantages, you don't need permission. You just need to understand them and apply them day in and day out. The creativity that people show in making excuses is truly impressive. If people put half the energy they use to explain why they can't achieve their goals into achieving their goals, we'd have a world full of champions. Let's address the biggest excuse I hear: I'm not talented enough. I love this excuse because it sounds so reasonable, right? So humble, even. But let me tell you something powerful. Talent is the excuse that non-committal people use to justify the success of others. That's all it is. It's permission people give themselves to stay comfortable. When someone says, "I'm not talented enough," what they're really saying is, "I'm not willing to put in the work necessary." Because here's the truth. Success doesn't distinguish between talent and hard work. Success only knows results, and results come from actions, not skills. The grand champion of all excuses is, "I don't have time." This one makes me smile because we all get the same 24 hours. No one has more, no one has less. The difference is in what we do with that time. I remember meeting a young mother who was working full-time, raising 3 children, and building a business on her own. Someone asked her how she found the time, and she said something I'll never forget. "You don't find time." He was right. Time isn't wasted, it's spent. And just like money, you can spend it poorly or invest it wisely. Time isn't about management, it's about priorities. When someone says they don't have time, what they really mean is, "This isn't a priority for me." And that's fine, but let's be honest about it. Let's not pretend that time isn't there. Everyone has gaps in their day. Everyone has moments they waste. The average person spends over 2 hours a day on social media. That's 730 hours a year. Think about that. That's enough time to learn a language, write a book, or build a business. But instead, most people scroll through other people's highlights and then say they don't have time to create their own. Another excuse I hear frequently is, "I'm waiting for the right time." Let me tell you something about the right time. It's never the right time. Never. The conditions are never perfect. The stars never align. Successful people start anyway. They understand that the right time is a myth. The only time that matters is now. And then there's my personal favorite. It's too hard. Well, of course it is. Hard. If it were easy, everyone would do it. The question isn't whether it's hard. The question is whether it's worth it. And here's an interesting thing about hard things. They tend to get easier with practice. But you have to practice. Every excuse has an antidote. For not being talented enough, the antidote is constant practice. For not having time, it's relentless prioritization. For waiting for the right time, it's starting now, because it's too hard. Start small, but start anyway. The truth about excuses is that they're like a warm blanket, comfortable but restrictive. They keep you cozy, but they also keep you stuck. And at some point, you have to decide what's more important, your comfort or your growth. You know what? The difference between dreamers and achievers is a pure, simple system. After decades of watching people transform their lives, I've discovered something powerful. 90 days is where the magic happens. Not a year, not a month, 90 days. Why 90 days? Because it's enough time to see real results, but short enough to maintain urgency. You can't procrastinate in a 90-day window. You can't fool yourself. The clock is always ticking. Here's how it works, and I want you to write this down. First, pick one area only. Most people fail because they try to change everything at once. That's like trying to catch 5 rabbits at the same time. You'll end up with none. Pick your rabbit. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your business. Maybe it's your relationships. But pick one. And then define what winning looks like in numbers, not in vague goals like getting better or making progress. In numbers, if it's health, how many pounds is that? If it's business, how many sales? If it's relationships, how many meaningful conversations per week? Numbers don't lie. They don't have emotions. They just tell you where you are. The fascinating thing about the 90-day framework is that the first 30 days are about setting the foundation. Most people give up here because they don't see results, but they're not looking for results. You're still building the machine that will create the results. The next 30 days, that's where the momentum starts to build for habits that seemed impossible. In the first month, they start to feel natural. You're not fighting with yourself anymore, you're flowing. The last 30 days, that's where the transformation becomes visible. That's where people start asking what's different about you. That's where the compounding effect of your daily discipline starts to show up in the mirror, in your bank account, in your relationships, in your memory. I remember working with a gentleman who decided to transform his health. You know what he did? He took a photo every day for 90 days at the same time, in the same place, in the same pose. The first 30 days, there were hardly any changes. Day 60, small changes. Days 90, I couldn't believe I was the same person. No one could believe it. You have to measure. What you measure, you manage. If you don't measure, you're just guessing. And guessing is not a strategy. Keep track, write down, track your numbers, not because the numbers matter more than the journey, but because the numbers tell you whether your journey is taking the right path. Right now, there's something powerful happening. You're making a decision maybe without realizing it yet, but you're making it. You're deciding whether to stay the same or change, and that decision will resonate in every morning that you have left. I want you to do something right now. Put your hand over your heart. Do you feel it? That's not just your heartbeat. That's time passing. And here's the truth. That heart beats about 103,000 times a day. Whether you use those beats to move forward or stay still, time will pass either way. Most people expect motivation to come like a bolt of lightning, but disciplined people understand that motivation is a result, not a cause. It comes from taking action, not waiting for inspiration. They don't wait to feel ready, they get ready by starting. What do I want you to do when you leave here today? Grab a piece of paper, not your phone, a real piece of paper. Write down one thing, just one thing, that you will do differently tomorrow. Not next week, not next month, tomorrow. Make it small enough that you can't fail, but significant enough that it matters. Maybe it's getting up 30 minutes earlier, maybe making 5 sales calls before lunch, maybe reading 10 pages of a book. Whatever it is, write it down, because written goals have a way of turning into reality. Then do something that might scare you a little. Tell someone, not everyone, just someone who cares about your success. Tell them what you're going to do and ask them to follow up, not next month, tomorrow. You see, everything we've talked about today, the myth of talent, the mathematics of discipline, the price we pay, the pillars we stand on, the excuses we overcome, the process of transformation, it all comes down to this moment, this decision, this commitment. 10 years from now, you'll surely get there. The question is, where will you be? Living with the results of discipline or the consequences of regret? Will you be wondering what if? Yes, if you had. The choice is yours. It always has been. Talent may determine your starting point, but discipline determines your destiny. Remember this, the pain of discipline weighs ounces, the pain of regret weighs tons, and every day you're choosing which to carry. So let me ask you one last time. What are you going to do? Are you going to continue living like most people, hoping that talent and luck will somehow transform your life? Or are you ready to join the few who understand that disciplined action taken daily is the only path to lasting change? The choice is yours, and your life will reflect that choice.